Good morning, everyone. How are you today? I was just trying to slip out to change that light setting, but here I am on Sewing in Slippers with Sue. You are here with Sue Pelland from Sue Pelland Designs, and I'm so pleased to be able to bring you a little glimpse into my world of Rotary Cut Applique. All the quilts that I make are cut out with a rotary cutter, and here on Sewing in Slippers, every week we play with new ideas on how we can make new designs using the rotary cut applique process. So it's a little introduction into my world of rotary cut applique and how you can use these techniques to enhance your applique quilts. So welcome everybody. You'll notice I've got a little bit of a cold going on, so I've got my water here, I've got my coffee, and I've even got my cough drops. So if I get into a little coughing fit, I apologize ahead of time. But we are going to dive right in to some projects today. So let me tell you what's been happening in my world. I've been traveling with my mom. I traveled all last week, so we did not have Sewing in Slippers last week. So I apologize for not being here last Tuesday at 11. But we have a wonderful guest next week, Tuesday at 11 o'clock. Next week we have Debbie Wendt coming. That is on the 28th. So please try to be here to support Debbie Wendt and hear all about her expert tips and advice. She is an expert in so many different areas of traditional quilt making, and she's pretty innovative as well. So I'm going to interview Debbie about her company called Wendt Quilting, and we're going to be having her do a little technique for us. I'm not quite sure which one she's going to do yet. I have two things picked out for her to choose from. So we're going to get into some really great techniques next week with Debbie Wendt here on Sewing in Slippers with Sue. So good morning, everybody. Glad to see some of you popping on here. Now, it is Thanksgiving week, and I want to wish you all a happy Thanksgiving. I'm so excited to be entering into Thanksgiving week, where I'm going to have my daughter home. She's finished with school today, so she has the rest of the week off. It's my son's birthday yesterday, and it was my daughter's birthday last Saturday. So we're going to have a little birthday celebration on Wednesday, Thanksgiving on Thursday, Christmas decorating on Friday, and then on Sunday we're having my sisters over for Thanksgiving celebration. So it's going to be a jam-packed week. But before we get started with all of that, I'm going to spend the next 2 days working on some projects. And I love having time in my sewing room. And you know, when you're running a business, that doesn't happen all that often. So if you see that I'm not really active on Facebook or Instagram, it probably means I've buried myself in my sewing studio, and I'm getting some new projects underway for all of you so that we can have fabulous classes and workshops here at Sue Pelland Designs. So today, I wanted to just take a minute and let you know how thankful I am for all of you. Without all of you out there watching and listening and taking my workshops and my courses online, I wouldn't be here and I wouldn't be able to do what I love most. I'd probably be at some corporate job like I used to do way back when. And now I'm able to be here and be flexible, be here on social media, and be present in my Ahead of the Curve membership for all of our members so that I can teach more people how to love the applique process and fall in love with rotary cut applique. So today, there's a project that's been over here. I've got a computer with two screens, so I'm looking at you right now, but over on my other screen is my desktop on my computer. And on my desktop, on my computer, I have had a photograph for years now. And it's a little tiny 1 by 1 inch photograph of a quilt. It's not even a quilt, a little decoration that I saw in a magazine. I'm going to try to bring that up if I can find it. I had it up earlier today. Yeah, there it is. So I'm going to be able to share my screen with you and show you the little project that I've been wanting to do for years around this holiday for Thanksgiving. and I have never had the opportunity to check it out and play with it. So today we are going to play. So let me share my screen with you. I'm going to share my desktop where this picture has been hanging out for the past 5 to 7 years. I mean, it's just ridiculous how long this tiny, tiny little picture has been hanging out. So this is a little wall hanging that I saw in a magazine. It wasn't in a quilting magazine. It was in a gifty kind of a magazine that you could purchase this little turkey Thanksgiving wall hanging. And I just thought it was so adorable. But this is the only picture I have, this tiny, tiny little picture. But I was inspired by it, and I looked at all of the shapes involved in that little turkey, and I said, you know what, this would be so fun and easy to do with Rotary Cut Applique. So I'm going to stop that share right now. I wish I could keep him, let's see. Let's see if I could keep him on the screen. Yeah, no, I guess. Yeah, I can only make him the big picture. I was hoping to make him the tiny little picture, but it doesn't seem like I can do that. See if there's a way I can do that. Nope, there's not. All right, so you have the idea in mind. That's what I'm going for. I want to create a turkey that looks similar to that one, and I know I can do that with Rotary Cut Applique. So we're going to dive right in because this is quite a big project for me to undertake in this short 1-hour segment. So what I do here on Sewing in Slippers is when I have an idea or a image or a inspiration, I am not trying to take something that I saw on the internet and copy it exactly. I'm being inspired by a picture, an image, an object, and then I want to bring it into my world of Rotary Cut Applique. So today we're going to experiment together. This gives me 1 hour every week where I can play with applique, show you how I approach that design process, and then these projects may make their way into an actual project down the line, or I'll make a pattern, or I'll have a course, or have a freebie that I give away. So on my website, SuePellinDesigns.com, you're going to find some freebies that we have for making some different projects using Rotary Cut Applique. So I'm just going to put that in the comments. SuePellinDesigns.com is where you're going to go if you want to grab one of our freebies. Now, yesterday I was introducing ahead of the Curve membership to our brand new members that signed up in November. We had new member orientation last night with about 11 or 12 of our new members, and that was just fantastic. We had such a good time. And I was showing them my Baltimore blocks, the blocks that I've been making this year with our ahead of the Curve members. So I was flipping through these Baltimore blocks, and they said, well, what is that on? Why, what are you designing your applique blocks on? So I showed them this CAFE design board that I made, and I covered it with a non-slip backing so I can use this on my table. It doesn't slip around. And this is what I designed my applique blocks on. Both of mine are tied up right now. I really should make a couple more of these because I've got my 2 different versions of my Baltimore blocks on that design wall. Well, that's one of the freebies that I did here on Sewing in Slippers with Sue. We made that together, and now there's a free handout for that, as well as a video on how to make the CAFE design wall, that design board for lining up your applique blocks. So that's the type of thing we do here on Sewing in Slippers with Sue. So let's dive right into our project today, where we're going to be making that cute little wall quilt where it has the Thanksgiving turkey on it. Now I have a whole bunch of ideas on how I might incorporate him into a project, but this is the basic thought behind the shape and the design for the turkey. So let's dive right in. I'm going to change my camera down to my workstation. If I can get that camera on correctly. And let me just adjust my lighting because I've got a glare there on my tools. Let me adjust my camera and my lighting so that you can see it in the best way possible. Okay, so I started diving in today to my scrap pile, and I've got a whole bunch of scraps here in the colors that I want to use for my turkey. So you'll see I've got my my table here that is adjustable, and I want to bring that table up so you can see a little bit better what I am working on. So I've taken all of my scrap colors, and I want to play with a little technique for the tail feathers on that turkey. So the turkey in the picture had some embroidery on it. I'm not going to do embroidery on my bird, so I'm going to use a little strip piecing technique for the tail feathers on my turkey. But before we get to that, we have to find the shapes that are going to work out for the turkey. So I started playing just about an hour ago, and I started playing with the shapes that I might use for the head and neck of the bird, and then for the little wattle, that little red, I'm not sure what else to call it. It's called a wattle, and it's the little part of the turkey that hangs down around his beak. So I wanted to start with that little wattle because I knew that my Hearts and More template A, the tiny little template A, was going to be the key to this whole bird and what size the bird was going to be, because if I create the wattle from this shape right here, and I just outline my Hearts and More template A, I think that that is the perfect little shape for that wattle that goes over his beak. So everything is going to hinge on this one little shape. So let's see how I'm going to cut out that shape. Well, the first thing is that I have a straight line here. So I'm going to go ahead and cut that straight line with my straight edge. Now I certainly could do this with the Hearts and More tool, but I'm going to start with one straight edge. Then I can just put my tool right up against that straight edge, and then I can trace it with chalk and cut that out with scissors. Now I like to do things a little quicker, so I'm going to rotary cut my applique, and I'm actually going to work on a rotating mat, and I'm going to very slowly cut around this tiny little tool. Now the tool is so small, I do recommend, if you are not accustomed to cutting out curves, that you go ahead and trace that and cut it out with a sharp little pair of applique scissors instead. And I just missed one little spot here. I think my blade's getting dull, but cutting that inside curve can be tricky when it's a small little curve. Now when you have a small little curve like this, you definitely, in fact any curve you're cutting, you definitely need a 28 millimeter rotary cutter to cut around those curves. And even when you're cutting around your curves with a 28 millimeter rotary cutter, you might miss a little spot. You might not get as close to the curve as you want it to be. So you can leave your template right in place and then clean up along the edges of the tool to get a little bit closer to that edge and make that the perfect little shape. Now if you end up with any little rough spots, you could certainly place your tool back on there and smooth out those little rough edges, or you can simply take your scissors and just smooth out any little rough edges you get along the curve. So why am I recommending that we rotary cut this shape? I'm really not. I think you should cut this with your scissors, but I just wanted to do it quickly with my rotary cutter. Now, any of the other tools that I'm recommending you use, the Hearts and More tools, the Leaves Galore tools, those are much larger curves than this tiny little Template A. Template A is the only one of my tools that I cut out normally with my scissors, and I trace it and cut it with scissors rather than using the rotary cutter because it is such a small little shape. Now, one thing that you're going to want in your toolkit when you're using these curved tools is an emery board. When I was cutting around the inside of that curve, I caught the edge of the curve with my rotary cutter, and that creates a little rough spot here on that inside curve. So I want to smooth out that little rough spot using an emery board. You could also use a piece of soft sandpaper or just regular sandpaper to smooth out that inside curve. If you don't smooth out your curves from time to time, and you've got a little spot on there that you've caught with your you caught with your rotary cutter, it's going to catch every time you go over that spot. And so you want to just run your fingernail over the edges of your tool and see if there's any little rough spots. If you find a rough spot, sand that out with your emery board, and that's going to take care of those little rough edges so you can cut cleanly every time with your rotary cutter. So that's a nice little tip about maintaining your tools to give you beautiful, smooth cuts. Now the tiny little tool, that one's going to be the hardest one to cut. So on that tiny one, I generally cut with scissors. So I went ahead and cut out this little wattle, and this is going to determine the size for everything else on my bird. So I want to come up with a head for my bird, and the neck of the bird, this is going to be where his face is, and that little wattle is going to come down over his beak. So that size looks really good. I did a little prep work. I fused some tan fabric for his head and his neck, and I did a little test to see what size would work with this Template A, and I came up with, let me think of what I did. I think I came up with Template C. So this was a great curve right here for Template C for his body, and I thought I was just going to be able to put Template C on the fold like this and make a nice body and head together, but it turned out it was too big. So this is how I ended up cutting out the body or the head and the neck for the turkey. So I used the arrow, that's the 0 degree marking for the bottom of his body. I wanted this part to be round, and in order to make a round circle, you need to start either on the 90 degree marking or on the arrow so that you get a perfectly round base here. And I'm going to mark this with chalk. So I'm just going to mark the whole edge of the tool, and I can cut that whole edge of the tool. But before I did, I wanted to make sure I was going to be happy with the top of my turkey. So the top of the turkey, if I use the top of this tool, it's going to have a funny looking head. It's not going to work out. So what I'm actually doing is taking this same Template C and turning it over, and now I'm going to match up that curve. So I'm going to match up the curve, the inside curve right here, and then go off the edge of the fabric. So I now have the 30 degree marking on the fold, and I'm just going to continue that curve. So that is how I'm going to cut out a shape like this that looks like a peanut. Okay, I've got this pretty little peanut shape, and if you ever need to make a peanut quilt, there you go. And we're going to add that little wattle. So how am I going to cut out this shape when I actually moved my tool during the cut or during the marking? So I'm going to go ahead and line this up again with the arrow. So that arrow is going to go right on the edge of my fabric here. And I'm going to make my initial cut from here to that full inside curve. Yeah, I can tell I need to change my blade, but that's all right. So I'm going to make that full inside curve. Now, I just fused this fabric. It's still a little bit tacky, so it's actually sticking to my to my ruler. So I have to be careful when I pull off the ruler. Now I'm going to match up that inside curve again and put the 30-degree marking on the fold. So there's really no choice. I've got to match up this inside curve, and I'm putting the 30-degree marking here. So there's only one place that I can place that tool to achieve both of those goals, and I've made that same little peanut. So you can see how reproducible these shapes are. Now they might not be exactly the same. I think this one might even be a tiny bit skinnier, although you know what, it looks exactly the same to me. But this is applique. So if my two shapes were not identical, that's okay. This is an applique quilt, and it doesn't matter if our shapes are the same every time. But maybe I want to do a quilt with 9 little turkeys. So I want 9 little bodies, or his neck, and I want them all to be relatively the same. Using the tools, you can make your shapes reproducible. So there I've got my turkey's neck and head and his little waddle, and I'm happy with that so far. Now I just found this little piece of orange. It might be a little bit too bright, but I was looking for a color for his beak, and maybe this color might be a little bit better, the yellow. I don't know what shape his beak needs to be. The yellow is not fused, so I'm going to use just a little piece of this orange, and I'm just going to create a small little beak for him. So just a little pointy beak here, and I'm going to make a little point at the end as well. So just, you know, we're just being creative here. We don't have to have things just so. All right, so there's a little beak for my little turkey. I'm going to put his waddle down over that beak a little bit. And then I thought what I could do is maybe use some buttons for his eyes. So I pulled out some buttons from my snowman kit. Where did they go? Oh, here they are. Let's see if the buttons are going to look good for his eyes. You know, the turkeys have kind of little beady eyes, so I'm going to use the tiniest little black buttons I can find. And you know what? That's looking rather cute here, I think. So let's pull his waddle down a little bit. We're going to put his 2 eyes right there. And wow, okay, he's already shaping up pretty cute. Now, I might make his beak a little bit better, but let's just go with that for now. So now that we have his neck and his eyes, his waddle and his beak, we kind of have a scale for his body. How big does his body need to be? So let's go ahead and put his head up here. And the body is going to come around like this. So I've got this nice piece of fabric that's fused, and I just noticed I have a little bit of fusible on the front of my fabric. I wasn't careful, and a little bit of fusible was loose, and it got on the front of my fabric. Now, if I catch that right away before ironing that again, I can probably scrape off that little bit of fusible. Here's a little tip. If you take your rotary blade, you don't want to cut through the fabric, so you're just going to hold it at an angle like this, and just scrape with your rotary blade, and you may be able to get those little bits and pieces off. And if you work at this, you can get that off. Now, I'm not going to worry about it too much because I am going to be cutting this out into an oval, and it might not show anyway. If it does show, another thing that you can do is just iron that fusible right down into the fabric. So the reason why it's shiny is because it was on an applique pressing sheet. So if I want to make it not shiny, I can put a piece of parchment paper over it, and I can iron this fusible, and it's going to iron right down into the fabric so you won't even see it. It won't be shiny anymore. And one other way that I can get rid of a little tiny bits of fusible that are on the surface of my fabric is I can grab my little tweezers. Hold on, I'm trying to find my little reverse action tweezers. And if I scrape off that fusible, I can see that that's coming loose a little bit. Let's grab that with the reverse action tweezers and we can actually twist that and take it right off. So that is really working best, getting it with the little tiny tweezers and twisting that little tiny bit of fusible off. So it looks like I want basically the whole rectangle. I want his body to be as big as that rectangle, but I want the edges to be curved. So I'm going to fold this in fours. Now this fabric is still tacky, so I would want to wait until this is completely cool, but I don't have time to do that today. You want to get on with your holiday preparations, so let's go ahead and cut this anyway. I hope I'm going to be able to unfold it once I cut it. The problem with doing this when it's warm is when the fusible is warm, it's tacky. And when I'm cutting 4 layers like this, I've got fusible on fusible, and it may just stick together. But we're going to try our best not to let that happen. Now, I want to make an oval, and I want it to be a cute little oval. Now, I'm going to, let's see, we still got the little turkey up there, and I'm going to remove him. But you can see the shape of the oval. It's actually got a little indent on the bottom, so it's kind of a circle, but it's a little indented on the bottom. So I thought I was going to use the 5-inch Hearts and More tool and make my oval this way. But I can see that's going to have a big straight line over here. It's going to be an oval, but it's really going to have one side that's very, very straight. So instead, I'm going to take a bigger tool and see if I can make that oval a little more rounded. And I think what I'll do, maybe I'll even go with the 9-inch. Let's see. Okay, so these are my Rings and Things tools. The 9-inch is too big for this oval. It's going to end up round instead of oval. So let's try this 7-inch. By putting it away from the 90-degree marking, that's what's going to make it an oval, because you're not making a quarter circle, but you're sliding it up. That's going to give you that oval shape if you're straight here. And then right here, I'm going to have a little indent on the top and the bottom. So let's give that a try. In fact, I'm even going to angle it a little further. So let's give that a try and see what shape we come out with by rounding those 4 corners and then having it come down here. I think that's going to give me quite the shape that I want, which is like a pumpkin shape, right? So that would be a beautiful little pumpkin by cutting it that way. But let's see how it looks with the body. Oh my gosh, it's just about perfect. Okay, so let's put his little eyes on. Wow, it's amazing when things come out almost perfect the first time. I won't have to do too much adjusting this time. I think he's looking rather cute. Now, I had him go up here so I can put some little feet down here. And for his little feet, I probably will just, let's grab a little scrap of fabric here. Again, I think maybe a lighter color. I need to bring him over on something else. Let's bring him over here so that I can continue to cut and continue to build him. Now, I would normally be building this on an applique pressing sheet so that I could press the whole thing together, but I didn't think of that ahead of time, so I'm just using what I've got here. Now, I certainly want some fused fabric for his little feet, and I don't have anything fused right now in the right color. I'm thinking that I need kind of a golden color for his feet. Here we go. Here's a little golden color. I don't know if it's too bright, but that's okay. We're going to just give that a shot. And for his feet, I think what we're going to do, I know it should have a little bit of pointy feet. I think that we're just going to use a little half circle and see what that looks like. And if I don't like the little half circle, what I can do is cut some little notches out of that half circle. So we've got 2 little feet here. And yeah, that looks a little silly. Those look a little bit more like feet that you would see on a kitty cat or something. So we need to make some little points in his feet. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to fold that in half and make a little cut. Okay, and then I'm going to fold it in half again, and I'm going to make another little cut. See what happens. I have no idea what this is going to look like. Oh, it looks more like teeth than it looks like feet, but that's okay. We can play with that, and we can probably make that look a little cuter the next time we do it. So I'm going to make a little cut here. I'm going to try to adjust this a little bit this time and see if I can make it look a little bit more like I wanted. Make a little cut this way. And yeah, maybe the feet are going to take a little bit more time to make turkey feet. But the idea is there. We want some little pointy parts there. So we're going to play around with his feet, and we're going to make that look a little bit nicer for the actual version. I'm not happy with those little feet that I've made, but it's good enough to play with. All right, so let's go ahead and make some feathers. Well, I want to just start off with this brown fabric for the feathers, and I want to play around with what size of feathers I need. I really think for scale, I really think the 8" is going to be the best size for his tail feathers, but it might be that I want to start with 8 and then go with 6 and then go with 5. So it really is going to depend on how much of that feather is going to show. I could probably do the 8 all the way and just fan them out, or I could even do the 6 all the way and fan those out. So let's just cut a couple of 8" leaves and see what that looks like. Now I haven't even fused this fabric because I really do want to play with those I really want to play with this idea and see what else I can do for his tail feathers to make it a little bit more interesting. Now I could certainly just cut one tail feather at a time from one fabric, just rotate that around and cut the other side of the feather. So I can make all the tail feathers exactly the same. That was a strip of fabric that was about 2.5 inches wide. I think they might have been from some strip sets that I had used, and they're leftover pieces from that. Maybe they are, maybe they're not, I'm not quite sure. And we're just going to use the 8" tool, and we're going to cut out some of those little tail feathers. And this is just going to be a let's play with it and see if it's the right size. So I'm not using the fabric that I really want to use. I'm not even using fused fabric. I'm just playing right now to see if these tail feathers are going to be the right size. All right, so I'm going to put one tail feather straight up and down like this, and then we're going to start to fan these out, and we might want to go down to a 6" or even a 5". So let's see what we think about the size of those little tail feathers first. I actually think they're going to be good. I think that size is going to work out well. Now I don't have enough cut because I was just testing to see what that was going to look like. But I think the size is going to be just perfect using that 8". So now I want to play around with those tail feathers. I think the solid colors are pretty boring, but if I did use some really pretty fabrics, I could probably get by with doing my tail feathers with just a couple of fabrics. So something like this, something that's got a little bit more color to it, and some coordinates to go with that. I could probably do my tail feathers that way. But I think that there's a better way. So let's go ahead and play with my idea of strip piecing our tail feathers. So I'm going to switch over to my, let's see. I'm going to switch over to a different camera. get into settings and get into video settings. We're going to switch over to my straightforward camera here. Okay, good. And I'm going to go ahead and look at all the questions before we go any further. Hey from Illinois. Grandpa was a turkey farmer. The 7 boys had to pluck feathers. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving. The turkey looks like fun. Thank you from Illinois. Please let me know who you are. Give me a oh, Kathy. Okay. Today from Illinois was Kathy. All right. Good morning, Bev Henyon. Welcome. Happy Thanksgiving. No problem being late. So, Kathy, you're normally in Ohio, and you're here in North Carolina, and you're having a fascinating time watching me make Thanksgiving turkey. Thank you. Hello, my friend. All right, Daily Life. I'm not sure who that is, but welcome. I'm glad you're here. Okay, super. So I'm going to do a little strip piecing. So let's go ahead and move our camera onto, let's see, we're going to move our camera down to the one on my sewing machine if I can get it right. Nope, wrong one. Oh, sugar. Hey, there we go. Now the camera's not aimed at the sewing machine right now. Just give me 1 second to get over there and get my camera. Sorry if I'm making you nauseous here by moving my camera. I should have had that set up ahead of time. But let's get that camera right on my sewing machine. I've got a little bit of just hand thread in there. So I want to do a little strip piecing with these strips and start to make my turkey feathers with some strip piecing. So bear with me as I do a little bit of strip piecing. I'm going to bring my I'm going to bring my needle all the way over to the right so that I'm getting it's a little bit more than 1/4 inch, and I'm going to strip some pieces together. And some of these pieces are really, really thin because I want a lot of different colors in my feathers. So let's see if I can do this. It might take me a few minutes to get a few strips together. And let me get down to the end of that one, because if we do a big long piece, we can cut this into multiple feathers. So when I'm doing my strip piecing, I'm just going to stitch and flip and just open that up and stitch another piece on, just like you would strip anything together. Now I'm just using scraps that I had cut from other projects, and I had a bin full of some brown fabrics. So I want to just strip piece some brown strips together so that we can try cutting those tail feathers out of the strip pieced fabric. I think this will be a fun little exercise to do, and it's something that I've been planning to do with my turkey all along. I've had this turkey picture. I know, Bev, you just came on, and so you missed that I said I've had this turkey picture right on my desktop for about 5 or 6 years. I can't even remember when I put that turkey picture on my desktop. But I've been wanting to do this little strip piecing process to make some tail feathers for my turkey. I've been wanting to do this for a long, long time. And I've almost missed the opportunity once again to do this before Thanksgiving. So thank you for allowing me to play with my current idea of how I want to use my tools to make a little Thanksgiving decoration. Now, if this comes out well, you may see it pop up in our critter series. You may see it pop up as a Thanksgiving wall hanging in next year's Ahead of the Curve membership. This is how I workshop my ideas and see if they're going to work out or not. I workshop these ideas here with you before I test them, before I perfect them and play with these with my Ahead of the Curve members. So it's a fun way to workshop these ideas, and then if we like the way this turkey comes out, Janie and I will write a pattern and even get a class together. But the fun part of workshopping this together is you get to see the creative process as it unfolds. I have never done this process before of cutting my leaves from strip pieced fabric, but I'm really excited about that possibility. So we're going to play with it together and see how it all works out. So any size strips will work. I'm kind of alternating between some wider strips and some narrow strips. I'm going to add on just a little bit wider strip here. And then I think we might have a big enough piece, maybe a couple more strips, so bear with me. And I'm just throwing these together with a roughly 1/4 inch seam allowance. But because this is applique and it's creative applique, there is no right or wrong size for your seam allowance on these strips. It's just a matter of getting these strips together so that we can have, some fun making some tail feathers. So I think we're just about wide enough. Let's do a couple more strips. I keep moving my camera, and I apologize. When the camera is aimed at the sewing machine, it is right in my way. It's exactly where I need to be sewing, and instead I'm dealing with that camera right in my way. So I apologize. I keep having to move that camera. Okay, let's see if this strip is going to be big enough. All right, we're gonna try this one, and then maybe one more, and then we'll start cutting our tail feathers from this strip piece fabric. So I have this thought that I can make the tail feathers look more like feathers if I use the strip piece fabric and I angle it out from the center of the feather. So in order to do that, I need a kind of a wide piece of strip pieced fabric so I can play with that feather on there. All right, so I'm going to add one more really wide piece. That way I know I'll have enough width, even if the pieces, I had pictured them being a little bit thinner, but you know, this is playtime. This is not my finished project. This is just demonstrating how I figure it out. So I'm going to figure this out with you, and then as I perfect the technique, I can adjust the size of my strips. There we go. I think we're good here. So now I've got a piece of strip piece fabric that's maybe 8 or 10 inches wide. So I can now play with this with my tools. So let's go back onto the overhead camera, and I think I need to do one more seam. Let's go to the overhead camera. First of all, this is the strip piece set that I just made. I would definitely press these all in one direction. So that's the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to press those, excuse me, I'll press those all in one direction, and then we'll go down onto the other camera. Okay. So the idea is I want to take this shape, but I want the strip piecing to come together in the center and all go off on angles this way. So on the original picture, it had some embroidery to make the feather design. Well, I don't want to do embroidery, so instead I want to play with this strip piecing idea. So let me go ahead and just press those strips. I've got my little iron right here. Let me get it warmed up. And I'm going to press those strips to one side. Then we'll be able to play with them and see how we can get the right angle for those tail feathers. So let's get those pressed first. I'm going to press those all in one direction. My iron might need to heat up just a little bit, but this little Aliso iron, oh my gosh, it's really such a wonderful product because it gets super hot really, really fast. So even though I just turned that on, it's already ready to press. My Aliso iron is one of my favorite little gadgets that I purchased for myself. And what I love about this little Aliso iron is how hot it gets for a tiny little iron. Now it also has a ceramic sole plate, so it cleans up really easily. If I do get any fusible on it, it's a very easy matter of cleaning that sole plate with a, I use Mr. Clean Magic Eraser to scrape any excess fusible off the bottom of that sole plate. Now, if you do have it baked on and caked on, you're going to use a stronger iron cleaner, like the Iron Clean sheets that I also carry on the website. These Iron Clean sheets are my second line of defense. So I use a Mr. Clean Magic Eraser first, so there's no chemicals. If that doesn't work, I use one of these Iron Clean sheets. And if that still doesn't work, then I will go to the Bowen iron cleaner to get my iron clean on the bottom. But that little iron has a ceramic sole plate, so it actually irons up really, really easily. So now that I have my strip piece set, I want those seams going at an angle this way. So I need to now cut that strip piece set with a straight ruler. And I probably want those going at about a 45-degree angle. So I'm going to use the 45-degree angle here on my ruler and give that a quick little cut with my rotary cutter. All right, so roughly a 45-degree angle. I could even do a little more severe angle. Maybe a 30-degree angle would be better. I don't have a 30 on this tool, so I'm going to grab my, let's see, I do have it here on my board. So if I go up at a, let's think about this. If I go up at a 60-degree angle, that's not going to quite be right. So let's see if I can do it at a 30-degree angle by holding my fabric this way. And that 30-degree angle might be a little bit too much, but I think it's going to work out okay. So I'm just going to put my fabric here so I can see the beginning and the end of that 60-degree line. And then I'm going to be able to cut right on that 60-degree line. Now 30s and 60s are a little tricky. If I'm cutting from a horizontal, it's a 60-degree angle. If I'm cutting here from the vertical, this is actually a 30-degree angle. So that's what I was going for, is a 30-degree angle like this. Then what I want to be able to do is put that together with another piece that's cut at a 30-degree angle this way. So all of my stripes are going out at that 30-degree angle. So I need to cut another 30-degree angle over this way. Let's see if I can accomplish that. If I put this edge on the 60, and then I cut at a right angle to it, then I should be getting the 30-degree angle. So I want this on the 60, and then I want this matching up with my my vertical lines like this. So yeah, this is a little, this part is a little tricky. I certainly, I know what I'm doing, and I bet you're saying, oh my gosh, that's crazy. How in the heck is she doing that? So I don't want you to be concerned about that just yet. We would certainly workshop this out if I'm going to do this in a workshop. I would have all of this all pre-planned for you. But that's the idea. We want to get all of these different angles going to make the tail feathers. And I've got another piece here. Let's see if that's at the right angle. Yeah, we could do a piece that looks like that. We could do something that looks like this, but we want to have enough of a seam line so that we can fit our 8-inch curve. So that one would work perfectly. If I sew this together, then I'm going to be able to cut the 8-inch curve out of this piece. So I'm going to go ahead and take time to sew this together because I really think that it's going to look so pretty. I really want to give you the finished piece. So give me a second. We'll sew that back together on our sewing machine. I'm trying to save some fabric so I can make a few of these, but for today we're just going to make one. And let me just sew these two edges together with that roughly 1/4 inch seam once again. So I end up with all those pretty little angles coming together to make those tail feathers. Okay, so let me come back to you for a minute. All right, so my goal for you is not for you to come here on Sewing in Slippers and to be able to make this project after you watch me. I'm workshopping. I am playing with these ideas. So you're just here playing along with me. So here we go. Here is my piece with my two 30-degree angles coming together. Now I want to show you what that's going to look like when we actually cut our leaf from it. So I'm going to explain to you a few different things that we'll need to do to make this into our tail feathers, and that's going to require putting fusible on the back of our fabric. So I'm going to take out my applique pressing sheet. This is the Fat Goddess sheet made by Misty Fuse. And we're going to add some fusible to the back of that fabric. Now, in order to add fusible to the back of that fabric, I'm going to need, oh, I don't want to lose my guy there, but okay. We're going to need to press this little funky seam here open. So I'm going to press this seam open to reduce the bulk of that strip piece set, cut on a 30-degree angle, going against another strip piece set, cut on a 30-degree angle. I've got to work out the details of how much fabric you've got to sew together and the exact way to cut those 30-degree angles before I ever put this together into a pattern. And I should have used a little bit bigger seam allowance. I was a little skimpy with my seam allowance, which is making it hard to open up that seam. But you get the idea. We're just going to open up that seam allowance right there. Okay. Now I need to cut an 8-inch leaf from this piece. So I know I need my tip to go right up into this little piece right here. So I even want to get this seam open way up towards the top, so I can get some fusible even on this little piece here at the top. I saw this pretty color up top here, and I didn't want to leave that one out. So let's grab my fusible web. I only need a piece to make my 8-inch leaf. So I'm not going to put a lot of fusible web on there. I'm just going to cut a nice small piece that's big enough to make one of these leaves. So let's grab a piece of the fusible. It's about 2 inches wide, 2.5 inches wide, and this is the length that I need right here. So that's as big of a piece as I'm going to put on the back of this fabric. And I want to make sure that I don't get any of that fusible on my nice brand new ironing mat. So I'm going to use 2 applique pressing sheets. I'm going to go ahead and put one underneath, and then because I am lucky enough to have an older one to put underneath, I'm going to put my newest pressing sheet on the top and give that fusible a nice hot press to get that onto the back of the strip piece set. Now, why did I not put fusible on the pieces themselves? Well, once I do all those seams, boy, that's going to be really bulky. So by opening up the seam and then putting the fusible on afterwards, that's going to keep those seams nice and flat and remove all of that bulk. Now, I certainly should have waited a little while for this fabric to cool before pulling it off, because with all of those seams, the fusible has a little harder time sticking. So if you wait for the fusible to cool, it makes that whole process a little bit easier. So now I can see where my fusible web is, and I can put my template here that I just cut. I can put the template right there down on the fabric. And I'm going to slide it down. I'm not going to use that piece up there after all. I'm just going to use that as my guide, and then I'm going to cut out my shape with my 8-inch Leaves Galore tool. So I don't even need this piece. I can put the straight line that goes right down the center of the 8-inch side of the tool, put that right down there on that seam line, cut one side, and then rotate that around. I can use my rotating mat, but there's long strings here, so it's a little cumbersome. And then I'm going to put that down again. Now the dash line on the tool is going to follow the line that I've just cut. That puts that centering line right back on that seam line again. And now I'm going to cut a second time. So here we go. I think I was off a little bit on my first cut. There we go. Now we've got this pretty little tail feather with all of the fabrics going from the center and out in different directions. Now, I'm not sure I love the yellow in there. When I do my next sample, I might keep it more brown and tan. But let's play and see what that looks like behind our little turkey. Now I'm rather happy with that. I think that's going to be really cute if I do all of his tail feathers with the multi-color strip piecing. So yeah, I'm really liking that. I lost his eyes because he was sliding around down here and his eyes went down onto my sewing table. So let me grab his eyes. So you could absolutely either do some plain tail feathers or go ahead and get creative and do some strip pieced tail feathers. And I think that our little Thanksgiving turkey is really shaping up just beautifully. I think I'll spend a little bit of time today to perfect my little turkey. I don't like his feet right now. I'm going to work on some little, the angles are wrong for his little toes. They need to go out from the center and I did them in instead. So I need to fix that. And I need to make maybe 4 or 5 or 6 more of these so that we can fan those out in the background. And I can't wait to have a little Thanksgiving turkey in order to make a cute decoration for the holiday. All right, well, happy Thanksgiving, everyone. I hope that you have had fun playing here with me at Sewing in Slippers with Sue. Yes, those feathers are they really came together the way I intended. The colors aren't quite right. Whenever I'm playing like this with you, I'm just using scraps of fabric that I had on hand. So then I know the process, and then I can pick the fabrics that I really want to use without wasting them. I just use scraps while we're playing, and you can do that too. Do all of your workshopping with your scrap bag. Use your ugly fabrics, and then once you get everything worked out, then you can start using your beautiful fabrics and creating that quilt that you really want to hang in your home. Well, I hope you've had a good time playing here with me today. I am just past the hour and I've got to go to the hairdresser, so I'm going to run, and I look forward to seeing all of you. I am so grateful for all of you as well. Thank you, Bev Henyon, for pointing out Penny, Katrina, Joanne, Janie, here at Sue Pellin Designs. We are all here to support you, to encourage you on your applique journey, and I'm thrilled to be here as your guide, as your mentor, as someone to just come and have fun with on Tuesday mornings, every Tuesday morning at 11. Now be here next week when we have Debbie Wendt as our guest on Sewing in Slippers with Sue. Please like this on YouTube. You can share with either YouTube or Facebook. Invite your quilting friends to join in and have some fun with Rotary Cut Applique. Bye everyone. Have a fabulous Thanksgiving holiday and eat lots of turkey, and I will see you next week on Sewing in Slippers with Sue.